My name is David Lain. I'm the author of the book Reconstructing Retirement, which explores prospects for employment beyond age 65 in the UK and the US. Now, when people think about reinventing or reconstructing retirement, they often think about the individuals themselves. So baby boomers, for example, resisting retirement and trying to combine work and retirement in particularly new ways. But my book starts from a slightly different perspective, and from the perspective of policymakers who, I argue, are seeking to reconstruct retirement by making it much more necessary for people to work beyond the age of 65, and by blurring the divide between work and retirement and when people can expect to retire. In terms of the policy changes, obviously one of the big differences is how much people will need to work into older age and future. So state pension ages are rising dramatically. So previously women were retiring at the age of 60 and men retiring at the age of 65 in the UK. And that's rising very dramatically. So next year it will be equalised for men and women at 65, and it will rise up to 67 by 2027, so very rapidly. In addition to this, the safety net of benefits that are available to older people is in decline as well. So for example, in the UK, pension credit was available previously from the age of 60, and it caught people who were exited involuntarily from work early. And in the United States as well, supplemental security income, which is the equivalent, although it's still available at the age of 65, is becoming much harder to get. So the safety net for people who can't make it to these new state pension ages is in decline as well. In addition to this, occupational pensions, salary-related occupational pensions, are in decline in both countries quite dramatically, and they were previously they were avenues or options for people to retire early, and the kind of pensions that are being replaced by defined contribution pensions are much less secure than they were. They don't offer those opportunities to retire early as well. So there's much more emphasis on working later and the need to work later. In addition to which, governments in both the UK and the US have sought to encourage opportunities to continue working. So in both countries, mandatory retirement has been abolished. So previously, an employer could force someone to retire at a particular age. Now, for most employees in both countries, that's no longer the case. So that's a big change. That gives people the theoretical right to continue working longer. And that happened much earlier in the United States in 1986 than in the UK in 2011. In addition to which, policymakers have reformed occupational pensions, so it's much easier, and state pensions. So it's now much easier for most people to take a state pension whilst continuing to work. So that blurs the divide between work and retirement. So in the first part of the book, I look at how policies changed and how it's kind of offering new opportunities, but also new necessities to work beyond age 65. The second part of the book then starts to look at the empirical side of it. So what factors influence whether or not people are continuing to work or even able to continue to work. And I do this through an analysis of the English longitudinal study of ageing and the US health and retirement study. And we follow people over a 10-year period to see the kind of paths they follow to working at age 65 to 74. And what this shows is three things. Firstly, the paths to retirement are not as simple as policymakers sometimes assume. So most people who are working beyond age 65, who manage to work at 65 plus, have reduced their working hours. For some of these individuals, that will have been a preference. For others, it may have been a necessity because of the physically arduous nature of their jobs or the stressful elements of their jobs. Just because people reach age 65 doesn't mean that the stressful and physically demanding work disappears. Around a third of people working beyond age 65 are in physically arduous jobs. So there may be a need for people to reduce their working hours. In addition to which, in the United States in particular, people who are working beyond age 65 have often had to change jobs or have changed jobs so that they are now working for a new employer. And there may be a range of reasons why they need to do that. They may be made unemployed, they may need to reduce their working hours, they may find the kind of work that they're doing is unsustainable in older age. So as a result, they need to change working hours. So it's not a simple way, it's not a simple pathway to working past 65. And working past 65 is far more uncertain than policymakers often assume. So that's the first empirical finding. The second empirical finding is about the capability to work. Now, obviously, there's a growing number of people who are highly educated and healthy and people who are in jobs that are quite sustainable in older age, but other people, a significant number, are not in that position. So the analysis in the book shows around about a third of people aged over 65 to 74 say they have a health condition that influences or gets in the way of their employment potentially. And that's probably an underestimate because people who are already retired, who are the majority, haven't really considered the health aspect of whether they could work or not. So health is an aspect for considerable numbers of people in this age group. And education as well. In the UK you have a bigger ratio of the youth employment, youth qualifications are much higher in a lot of cases than older people. So in the end of the book, I start to consider the policies that we could introduce to make this a better system for people. And these are what I call Lifecourse policies. So we need to invest in education, support for caring. We need to consider financial support. So if people are exited from work early for reasons of health, for example, there needs to be adequate financial support for them. And there needs to be proper pension income available at the age of 65. Finally, there needs to be a strengthening of age discrimination legislation and a removal of some of the ambiguities in the legislation. And as a final closing point, a reorientation of policy really is necessary if we want to have the certainty of retirement in future. Thank you.